Hello, and welcome to Of the People. I'm Robert Chernin. Thank you so much for joining us again. A turn of the head, or when saying sorry really just isn't good enough. So post-assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, saved only literally by the turn of his head, there are still so many questions that are roaming all over the press. Kimberly Cheadle, she's the head of Secret Service, for her part, basically said, number one, the buck stops here. Number two, I'm sorry. And number three, I'm not quitting, which just again goes to show you that for the Democrats, there's no accountability and there is no consequences for failure. One has to ask themselves, would she have not resigned had the assassination attempt been successful, or is the only reason she hasn't resigned is because it was a failed assassination attempt, which we'll get to in a second. But there's so many questions here that really the American people need to be answered. The first is obviously line of sight. How the hell does someone get within 130 yards of the president in a direct line of sight in a in a Secret Service event? In a Secret Service event, when it's declared a Secret Service event, and that's an official thing like the Republican National Committee, what ends up happening is they secure the area, they sweep it days before, no one gets in or out, and they are responsible for coordinating all security at an event. RNC is like that, the Republican National Committee, next month, the Democratic National Committee, they're all like that. So to now say, oh, it was the local police's fault because they dropped the ball, I guess when Ms. Cheadle says that the buck stops here, she wasn't really telling us the truth. So first is really the line of sight. And then the question then becomes, it's 130 yards, and the guy gets off 5 to 8 shots. I've heard different numbers, 5 or 8, but let's go with 5, which is the shorter number. How does he get off 5 to 8 shots before the Secret Service sniper takes them out? Oh, and why, after there was some 3-minute, give or take, overlap where they had him in their sights, why wouldn't they have taken him out then? The sniper was not given permission to take him out until after he shot. Why was that? I wonder. So, and then where were the drones? In any Secret Service event, there are drones. There's always drones. Where were they? So not only do you have part-time Secret Service agents guarding the former president, who were, I guess, Homeland Security employees, you have no drones. And then obviously the local police officer went up, saw him, and then came back down. Now, I've had people on the ground there. If you look over 130 yards, it's not that far. It's not like they were using a real sniper rifle, right? A sniper rifle, so defined, is really more like an AR-10, which would have a 7.62 load or a 308 load, maybe 800 yards out, or a Creedmoor 6.5. This was an AR-15. This was, in the parlance of rifles and long-range shooting, this is a baseball throw. And if you looked from the stage, you could see him over there. So I don't quite understand this. And everybody's now talking about, oh, the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, and it's like the Reagan shooting. No, it's nothing like either of those, because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan at point-blank range and shot in the back, right? Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley Jr. in the front, almost point-blank range as well. None of those were a long-range shot. The only thing this is similar to was obviously the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Think Lee Harvey Oswald. And at this point, maybe we're talking about another Jack Ruby moment, because Oswald shoots Kennedy, Ruby shoots Oswald, no way to question the shooter. I forget the young kid's name, shoots Donald Trump, and then the snipers take him out afterwards. How convenient. Now you can't ask him any questions either. I'm not saying there's conspiracy, but there's an awful lot of questions here. So here's one of the differences, right? We have social media. Back in those days, we didn't have social media. So it reminds me of a line from Chico Marx of the Marx Brothers, like, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? I think most of us are going to believe our own eyes in all of this. But there's 2 other questions here that I really want to ask. Actually, one question. Does anybody really think that this 20-year-old kid outsmarted and outfoxed the Secret Service right in front of the Secret Service when he climbs up the ladder, right in front of the local police, and right in front of the attendees who were pointing that there was someone on the roof? So if anybody thinks that This young kid outsmarted the Secret Service. There's oceanfront property in, I don't know, pick it, Arizona that I'd like to sell you. It's just not possible. And now we have to rely on the FBI to do the investigation. And the problem is at least half the country, probably more, doesn't trust the FBI, and for good reason, to do an independent investigation. Right? These are the same people who promoted Russiagate. These are the same people who denied the Hunter Biden laptop, the same people who raided Trump's residence in Mar-a-Lago for classified documents, the same people who planted or bugged his campaign office. Now, I'm not saying that this is a cover-up. I'm not even saying this is a conspiracy. What I'm saying is that there are a lot of questions that would lead a reasonable person, and most of the time I try to be reasonable, a reasonable person to be open to that possibility. The country needs to come together on this, but the country's only going to come together on this if we get fair and honest answers to those questions in an independent investigation. But we all know at this point, and if I had my tinfoil hat, I'd put it on. We all know at this point they're going to determine that the shooter acted alone, much like they denied, if you remember, the shooting at the congressional baseball game where Congressman Steve Scalise got shot by the shooter after he was, I guess they call him a domestic terrorist, but after he responded to Bernie Sanders' violent rhetoric. And the investigation came to, do you remember that one? Suicide by police, meaning that the guy wanted to die and therefore that's what he did. And that's not true. That's crap. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, a turn of the head, an act of God saved President Trump. And saying you're sorry really isn't good enough. We want answers. We want an honest investigation. And I think the country comes together on that. And the country deserves that. You want to start putting the country back together and uniting the country? Give us an honest investigation. And don't sweep it under the rug and tell me or anybody else that the shooter acted alone. Let the facts speak for themselves. And that's the monologue. And now joining us for the main show, I am so excited to have with us Chris Widener, one of the top 50 motivational speakers in the world. He's got 24 books out there. He is just a force for positive and good. And he has got a lot of different thoughts on the Trump assassination, the divisions within the country, where we go from here. Oh, and by the way, he's also going to be one of our main speakers as Israel Appreciation Day. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to Of the People.
I thought it was my dashing good looks is why you wanted to have me on. But I will take because I'm a force for good.
What are the things that sort of stick in your craw and go, I want that question answered, and that one?
Well, I'll tell you, have you guys seen the picture that came out today? Somebody stood in the spot where Trump was. I mean, everything's gone now. They went out to the thing. They stood where he was, and they took a picture of the building.
No.
I'm shocked Trump didn't see the guy on top of the building. Because, I mean, you can, like, I saw the picture. I was like, my first thought was, because Trump was looking that way. I mean, of course, the guy was kind of crawling, but had he stood up or something, you could have seen the guy on the roof. That's how close this thing was.
Right.
Pretty crazy. I have a friend who's former Secret Service. He's guarded 4 presidents and former presidents. And we had a very interesting talk. And his thing is we got to kind of sit back and listen to what their explanation is. He said, because they give certain things over to the other agencies that they're working with. And, you know, I put on 7 events a few years ago with 45,000 people in attendance. We had President Trump at 5. We had Mike Pompeo at 2. But that was a closed arena, right? So they shut that thing down for 2 days before, dogs everywhere, and, you know, the whole thing. And then behind the curtains, there was like 30 guys with M16s and full riot gear. And they had the night vision in case the lights went out. I mean, it was pretty powerful kind of, scene back there. But these open deals is really hard. But the thing that just surprises me is there's only 2 buildings you really kind of need to look at.
That's right.
One was directly to the right as you were looking out. One was directly to the right. And the other was kind of at like 11 o'clock. There wasn't a lot to cover there. It's not like you're going through he's walking down the street through downtown San Francisco where there's dozens of buildings and windows. And So my guess is my first guess is that it was just really, really bad planning and strategy, and they botched it. I know somebody who works with what's called FirstNet, and most people don't know what FirstNet is, but it's AT&T driven, and FirstNet is what all first responders across the country use, and so it's a private band that they can use. And so when I was talking to this person, she said that when they come into a place like that, they can lock out a channel so that every single police, fire, whatever in that has one channel, and they're all talking to each other. So when somebody goes, there's somebody on the roof, everybody hears it. And so there's just so many questions. And you talk about conspiracy theories. I always say, look, and this is my analogy on conspiracy theories. If a woman who lives in a trailer park will cheat on her husband and get her boyfriend to kill him for $5,000 worth of life insurance, why do we not believe that people would not conspire to control the United States government, the economy, everything? So we shall see, I think. I can't hear Ericka. I see she's talking, but I can't hear her.
Oh, good golly. I said, I've got my tinfoil hat on just for this occasion. I appreciate the fact that you spoke to how the comms work, because I was like, you can't tell me that if there's police running around and there's people telling the police there's somebody on the roof, that the Secret Service don't hear that. Are you can you tell, what? And so you've confirmed that's.
The other thing is from what I've read, is the rules of engagement. You can't fire until they fire. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so
wait,
well, that's what I've heard. But if you're doing like a rope line and some guy brings a gun out, I think you'd shoot the guy. If you're dumb enough to pull a gun within 20 feet of the president, you're kind of going to meet Jesus pretty quick, right?
I actually suggested that. There's this turn of phrase called suicide by cop.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you know what I'm talking about. People will, for the listeners, if you don't know, people will go out and intentionally commit crimes and do something that will make the police shoot at them so that they are killed. It's almost, I mean, there's so much just wrong with the whole scenario that it really is rife for conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, you got the whole thing that it had it been done before the convention, then he hadn't picked his VP yet. I mean, but again, here's the other thing. This is the problem with government lying to the people.
Yeah.
Eventually the people stop believing you, even if, let's just say it was just really bad planning and they botched it from beginning to end. There's 100 million people in America that kind of go, yeah, I could see them setting him up and trying to kill him. Yeah, I could see the CIA doing that.
Absolutely.
Without blinking an eye, and they'll just grab their cup of coffee and keep on drinking, right? This isn't like, they're not going, ooh, they're not in some seance somewhere. These are people who are normal, regular people, but they've been lied to for so long.
Yes.
That they just they'll believe anything.
And that's what I've said is literally, there's only so many times Alex Jones can be proven right before you go, well, I don't know, maybe the frogs are gay, and then then they are gay, or I know I'm being hyperbolic, but let me make a complete sentence here.
By
Chris.
the way, Gay Frogs was the name of my first band I was in. Kidding. Never been in a band.
The post you made about whether or not we can be unified, I thought was very well articulated. And not in a way that's like, like so hyperbolic and ridiculous like some people do, but just really matter of fact. And I wondered if you would share a little bit about that with our listeners. And because we started the episode with talking about how you are Mr. Positivity, right? You are a motivational speaker. Your books are about, improving your life and doing better. Your own personal story is really something is really spectacular. Would you share a little bit why, your opinion on whether or not the right and the left can be unified, and why or why not?
Well, and being a doomsday prophet was not my first career choice. It really does not come naturally to me. It doesn't. I hate, in many ways, I hate what I have to say every day. Because it shouldn't be this way, but it's true. And so kind of what I talked about in that video was people say, oh, can we get along? Can we be unified? Do you think we'll ever come back together? And the problem is that for the vast majority of our American history, we have all been under the same generic worldview. We'll call it the Judeo-Christian capitalistic freedom worldview. Doesn't mean that, Thomas Jefferson wasn't a deist and, it doesn't mean that everybody was Jewish or Christian, but it was the worldview. There is a God and I'm not him, right?
Yes.
And capitalism and freedom are good and people ought to be rewarded on a meritocracy and those kinds of things. And you bring it like into the 60s. Back in the day, Democrats and Republicans would disagree about, they would agree on where they wanted to go because they were all under the same worldview. But they disagreed on how to get there. Well, you can work through how to get there. And I used the analogy in the video. If you're starting in Seattle and both people agree to go to LA, one might want to go on I-5 and the other might want to go on the 101 or Highway 1, whatever they call it, the coastal one. You both want to go to LA, but you're arguing about how to get there. But if one wants to go to LA from Seattle and the other wants to go to Chicago and Seattle, the two shall never meet. One's going to go on I-5 South, the other's going to go on I-90 East, and they will never meet. They're going to go separate ways. That's where we are now because of a second worldview that has come in from starting in the 60s, and it is the classic what would you call it? Secular humanist, Marxist,
God is dead,
godless, God is dead, right? And so. But here's the problem. It's okay to have two worldviews, except for this. Both worldviews see themselves as having a moral imperative. It's not just, hey, we think our way is better. It's we think our way is right. We think our way is good and your way is evil. So this is why, one of the shocking things after President Trump's assassination attempt was these man on the street things where they're talking to people. And then, of course, we see, all these people. There's millions of people that wish he was dead. There's millions of people that are upset that the guy missed.
Oh, my gosh. It's been so gross to see that stuff.
But it's because they believe he's evil. And my son texted me the night that it happened, and he said, what do you think of this thing? I said, you call somebody Hitler long enough, eventually somebody's going to try to kill him.
Yes.
Because, think about when we were in high school. Did you guys ever play Lifeboat? They called it Lifeboat, right? You've got a lifeboat and there's 6 seats, but there's 8 people. Who are you going to put in the lifeboat?
Who are you going to pick?
And who has to drown? Well, there's another one. If you could go back in time and kill Hitler in 1938, would you do it? And it creates this moral,
when he's a baby, right? Would you kill baby Hitler?
Yeah, it creates this more, killing one to save, 12 million or, whatever, that's the dilemma. And so when you call somebody Hitler long enough, eventually somebody goes, well, hey, I know how to shoot a gun. I'll go do it. I'll be famous and nobody likes me anyway. Maybe this is the way everybody will like me. Yep. So the problem is that the right thinks that the left is evil and the left thinks that we are evil. And abortion would be the classic example, or a low-hanging fruit example, right? Pro-life says if you kill a baby, that's evil. So we don't want to kill any babies. And the left, their perspective, their worldview is women should have autonomous rights to their bodies and be able to do whatever they want to, and any other option is evil. So therefore, we're going to oppose you as though you are evil if you don't want to let us have choice. And the pro-life says you are evil because you want to kill a baby. They're not seeing the other perspective.
Well, and choice only when it's what I want the choice to be. You only get a choice if I say that you get a choice in that way. And it really is an authoritarian worldview because I think that fundamentally is the difference between the left and the right is The right's worldview, I'll say my Christian Judeo-capitalist worldview, allows for theirs to be, you can go have your little commune and do whatever you want over there, but I'm going to be over here doing my thing. But theirs does not allow for me to have my own position.
Yeah. Well, and this comes down to the fact that I wrote an article for the Chattanooga, and I live here in Chattanooga. We had the big drag show debate thing here a couple of years ago, and we passed a law in Tennessee that I was very involved in getting passed, where you have to be 18 or over. And so I wrote an article called "How Can Conservatives and the LGBTQ Community Get Along?" And here was my premise. If we accept that the other has the right to believe what they want to believe and do what they want to do. So what I said in the article was, if you're a man and you want to dress up like a woman and dance on tables, just nobody under the age of 18. But here's what I said. I said, look, and greater Chattanooga is maybe 400,000 people in Hamilton County. I said, look, I am a wealthy man, Christian, Republican, conservative. I got 5 boxes checked against me with
you're done.
100,000 people in my greater area where I live. There's at least 100,000 people that would look at me and say, I can't stand that guy. He's horrible. You have to accept that I'm entitled to be part of society, and I will accept that you are part of society. But here's what they want. They don't want acceptance. They want approval. They want approval.
Yes.
And beyond approval, once they get you to approve, then they will demand that you advocate. So it's not enough to just accept me. It's like when a Christian says, well, it's sin. And they go, well, you can do it if you want. I don't care. It's just my personal belief. That's not enough. You have to believe that they're good. And then once you believe that they're good, then you have to go tell everybody else they're good.
Well, and isn't this even almost like, this is maybe too deep. And you tell me if you want to answer before our commercial break or after. Okay. I see the left, and I'm speaking pejoratively, this worldview that we're talking about. I see that as an extension of generations of fatherless, divorced homes. It's like everybody has mommy and daddy issues, and they're looking to the world for the validation that they didn't get from their parents.
Yeah.
And because they have no God, they have to extract it from the world by force.
Yeah. Well, and of course the Democrats step in. They are the state is God. I mean, look at what just happened in California, where Newsom signed the deal that said that teachers don't have to communicate with the parents about if they want to become transgender or change their gender or those kinds of things. Parents are now out. The new parent is the state, which is exactly what they've always wanted. They want the state to be God. And so you answer to the state. The state's biggest enemy or biggest competition is God, because it's where do your allegiances lie?
Correct. Oh my goodness. All right. Okay, you guys. Well, hopefully when we get back from this here commercial break, Sir Robert Chernin will be back with us. It definitely is one of those days where technology is conspiring against him. It is spectacular. It's something to behold.
Putin. Ericka, it's Putin.
It's
Putin
YouTube. They're censoring us.
Our podcast.
Okay, hold on. So on that note, you guys, to really, really make the Google overlords angry, let's hear about Israel Appreciation Day, which Chris Widener is going to be a speaker at. We're going to see a little commercial about it coming up in September.
Why Israel Appreciation Day? Because no one is telling the Israel story about why Israel's existence is so important, not just as a Jewish state and not just as an ally of the United States, but for all the positive achievements Israel has contributed to the world in science, technology, medicine, human rights, religious freedoms, rule of law, democracy, and so on. We need to start winning the public relations information war and change the narrative, especially among our younger generations. We need to get the information out there and arm those people who understand the seminal importance of Israel to the world. And being the Jewish homeland, doesn't begin to tell that story of why Israel is so important. It's something we all can come together on, and honestly, it's something we all must come together on. It is imperative the general public understands the nature of the very special relationship between Israel and the United States, and Israel's importance to the world. So please join us on September 18th in Washington, D.C. as we celebrate Israel Appreciation Day. You'll also be able to find us live on all the streaming channels, including Roku, Apple TV, Dish Network, and others. Because never again is now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Chris Widener, author, speaker. What, you know what, Chris, you do a bunch of stuff. You are a very interesting fellow. Okay. Why don't you share?
I told my wife today,
why can't I hear you?
Career.
Wait, can everybody, is it oh man, is this more tech issues, you guys? Okay, somebody comment. Can you guys hear Chris? Is it just my system?
I can hear you.
Oh, no. Good golly, Miss Molly.
Can you hear me now?
Say something.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. Hey. Okay. So why don't you tell everybody about the fancy stuff that you're up to? What's the most exciting thing? What are you the most excited about that you're working on?
I've had 3 careers. I started out as a pastor. I spent 14 years as a pastor, but I was doing motivational speaking while I was a pastor. So Sunday mornings I was preaching, and then Wednesday afternoons I was, speaking at Microsoft or General Electric or Harvard Business School, whatever. Then I left being a full-time pastor in order to become a professional speaker. And then I ended up involved in politics because my best friend ran for the governor of the state of Washington and lost on the second count. He won the first count, won the second count, lost on the third recount, the closest governor's election in U.S. history. 3 million votes cast. He lost by 129 votes. So now I'm like, I told my wife today, I said, I need a 4th career before I retire. Like, I need one more thing. And I've gotten really into Bobby Flay. So I watch every Bobby Flay show now. And so now I've
food like chef.
Yeah, like it is. It's totally random, but I'm so into it right now. But so I told my kids, just call me Chrissy Flay. Or Chrissy Slay. That's my new chef name, Chrissy Slay. But no, I am up to some fun things. I've got a great program we're running called the Red Referral Network, which is for conservatives who want to meet together and do business with one another, share business with one another. I'm involved in a group called ShareRight, which is a 501c3. It's a health sharing company for conservatives, shareright.org. And so most of what I'm doing now is politics.
What was the referral thing?
Red Referral Network is the name of it. And Dinesh D'Souza helped start it. And it's similar to a program that a lot of your listeners probably heard of, and many of them maybe have joined. It's called BNI, Business Networking International. They've been around for 30 years. We are essentially Business Networking International, BNI for conservatives, because, Dinesh and I started talking. Yeah, there's the Red Referral Network. Dinesh and I started talking like, why do we continue to give our money to people who hate us? Like,
this is what I'm saying. Yes.
They're going to take our money that we spend, and a little portion of it's going to go get somebody elected. And that person's going to stand in front of a microphone and say, Chris Widener is a racist, homophobic insurrectionist. And I paid for the message. So,
yes.
So I want to spend my time, giving my money to conservatives. If I have to choose between a conservative roofer and a liberal roofer, I'm going to go with the conservative roofer.
Easy choice.
Frankly, even if he's worse than the liberal roofer, I'd probably go with the conservative.
You just made my day today, Chris, and here's why. I actually bought a URL. I won't say what I don't know if I can say. It doesn't matter. I bought a URL, and I was like, I'm going to start a networking group for just conservatives, and because screw this. What's that, Robert?
You can say it.
Oh, it's bullcrap. Unwoke Networking. It's unwokenetworking.com. Yeah. But I never did anything with it because I was
like, you are. Jump on board.
I'm in. I'm registering. Okay, so that's really cool. And then what was the health insurance thing you mentioned?
Well, it's not health insurance. It's what they call health sharing. It basically it is exactly, for the most part, like health insurance. It works like health insurance, but it resides in a 501c3. And so, the top 5 CEOs in health insurance make $20 million a year or more. So this is why health insurance is expensive, because $100 million goes to 5 people before anything ever happens. 5 people get $100 million. So when you put it into a 501c3, the average family of 4 with health insurance pays $2,000 a month. The average family of 4 with us pays $605 a month. So, it's a savings of, $1,400 a month. That's $16,000 a year that people can put right straight into their pockets. And they're not giving their money to woke insurance companies who are doing gender affirming care, which is really child mutilation or abortion.
Or forcing experimental treatments on you.
Where does your love of Israel come from? I mean, why Israel and why Israel?
I love Israel because God loves Israel. As a pastor, I went to 4 years of Bible college, and you start in the Old Testament, and before you ever get to the New Testament as Christians, and there's a story where God says to the Israelites, he tells them why he picked them. And he says, it isn't because you're greater than everybody else. It isn't because you're a big nation. It isn't because you're rich. It isn't because it's to demonstrate my love for humanity through you. I chose you to show the world that I love people. And that's why you are the chosen people. And, the Bible is complete with commands to love Israel, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, all those kinds of things. So how can I hate what God loves? I can't hate what God loves. And God loves the nation of Israel. And, I told you once, Robert, I have a friend of mine, secular Jewish guy, and we were having dinner together one night, and he says, do you believe in God? And I said, I do. And he said, really? And I go, I do. And he goes, really? And I said, yes, I do. And he goes, really? And I go, yes, I do. And he goes, you never have any doubts? And I said, I do have some doubts from time to time. That's why they call it faith. And then I believe God gave me the thing to say to this young man. I said, do you know one of the biggest reasons I believe in God? And he said, why? And I said, you. And he looked at me and he said, oh, don't give me that chosen people thing again. I've heard that my whole life. And I said, think about it. You shouldn't even be here. For thousands of years, you've traveled around the earth. You should have been intermarried. There should be no Jewish blood left. You should have intermarried over, 1,000 generations and all this. And then with everybody trying to kill you and drive you out of their lands and everything. The state of Israel, there is no greater miraculous act of God than the fact that Israel even exists. And to me, that is such a great sign of God's sovereignty and God's promise to protect his chosen people. And that really challenged him to think, because it's a miracle. Israel is a miracle every single day. It's a miracle. And every Jewish person is a miracle. And of course, there's good Jewish people and bad Jewish people. It's like there's good Gentiles and bad Gentiles. I mean, it doesn't mean everybody's perfect. But as a nation, as Israel, they are God's chosen people. How do I hate something that God loves?
And that is part of our theme for Israel Appreciation Day.
Absolutely. And evangelicals, Christians, I believe, and Jewish people, they are best friends because, as you mentioned, they're coming for both of us. And the reason why they're coming for both of us is because we believe in the sovereign God. And that's the biggest competition of the state. It's God. In fact, did you see, I don't know if it was CNN or MSNBC, but I bet that it was one of those two. Did you see the gal in the panel discussion last week who said, or maybe 2 weeks ago, she said she was announcing to the other people on the panel, and these Christians believe that their rights come from God.
Right,
Yeah. They believe God gave them inalienable rights.
Like, you mean what the Constitution says? Oh my God.
The Declaration of Independence, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean,
oh my God.
Look, I want to segue. I know you've got just a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Tell me about the new book that's coming out. What is it?
Well, it's called Becoming American Revival.
I'm sorry.
But very similar. No, there's no big deal. It's about how, we're talking about putting your faith in the state. But I think that a lot of times we put our faith in politicians. And I love President Trump. I put on an event series. We had 45,000 people at. I'm friends with Don Jr. Like, I am all in fan. But President Trump is not going to save our country. God is going to save our country, because long after President Trump is gone, hopefully he's got a lot more years left. God transcends, right? And so to me, this is about one of the reasons there is this secular humanist Marxist worldview, I believe, is because the Judeo-Christian believing worldview didn't perpetuate itself. Somewhere along the line, and I think it's primarily by giving up schooling and sending our kids off to the state schools, right, where they're just indoctrination centers, we need to get back to a relationship with God where we understand that there is a God and I'm not him, and that there is a way that we should live, starting with the 10 Commandments. I always ask people, what would be wrong if we actually lived out the values of the Bible? Like, what would be wrong? Love your neighbor, do unto others, all these kinds of things. And it's usually just the people who are doing really bad, wrong things who they're the ones who don't want any sort of authority in their life. So it's really about putting God back into the center of it, because when God's involved, then things, tend to take care of themselves, right? You can pass a law that says do not murder. People still get murdered all the time, right? The 10 Commandments say do not murder, and we're going to make a law, do not murder. People still murder. You know who doesn't murder? People whose hearts and minds have been transformed. Those people don't murder anymore. So the way to stop murder and sin and those things is not to pass a law, but it's to have hearts and minds renewed, and to put them in have them see their proper position in this life as I am obedient to my sovereign, to God. And that's the difference between the two worldviews. We recognize a God who we are subject to and will answer to someday, and they just view the state as God and all the other kind of stuff.
That is a perfect place to end, because I know that you have another place to be.
I want to tell people, Robert and his team and the folks, the fact that you are doing this is really amazing. Lots of people maybe had the idea, but one person stood up and said, let's do it. And that's you and your team. And so I just appreciate that you guys are doing it and that you've asked me to participate, because we really need this. We need to do this, because the United States has forever been the number one sister country of Israel, and our greatest ally, particularly in the Middle East. And it is important for us. And there's just so many Americans who don't appreciate Israel, don't understand what's really going on in the world, and the significance of it. And so hopefully we can change some hearts and minds through this.
Why Israel Appreciation Day? Because no one is telling the Israel story about why Israel's existence is so important, not just as a Jewish state, and not just as an ally of the United States, but for all the positive achievements Israel has contributed to the world in science, technology, medicine, human rights, religious freedoms, rule of law, democracy, and so on. We need to start winning the public relations information war and change the narrative, especially among our younger generations. We need to get the information out there and arm those people who understand the seminal importance of Israel to the world. And being the Jewish homeland doesn't begin to tell that story of why Israel is so important. It's something we all can come together on, and honestly, it's something we all must come together on. It is imperative the general public understands the nature of the very special relationship between Israel and the United States, and Israel's importance to the world. So please join us on September 18th in Washington, D.C. as we celebrate Israel Appreciation Day. You'll also be able to find us live on all the streaming channels, including Roku, Apple TV, Dish Network, and others. Because never again is now.